Hello, and welcome to Ask John. I'm glad you joined us today. I think this might be episode 21 or 22, but who's counting? Started this show a couple years ago, and when I started off, the idea was that I was going to promote my business. I'm a financial advisor, and people were going to come on and ask John some questions. And I guess the first couple of shows went that way, but then sort of switched things around. I enjoyed interviewing people so much that I started asking them questions. But I don't think I wanted to change the name of the show. I think Ask John sounds better instead of John Asks. That doesn't sound right now. So it's still Ask John, but it's kind of a different format. And here we are again. I have been lucky to interview a lot of interesting people. And today I have a very interesting person, Larry Levy, who I've known for many, many years. How many years do you think we've known each other? At least 25.
At least 25.
And, Larry is a Rotary buddy, and I think we're both wearing our Rotary pins today. Anyway, this is Larry Levy. And Larry, tell us a little bit about yourself. You're an employee relations management consultant. Is that
That's
right?
correct. For the last 35 years, I've devoted myself to managing a business that helps employers deal with problem employees.
Yeah.
And 3 years ago, I was blessed to include an employment attorney. So now we function as a team. The attorney takes care of all the legal aspects. I do the investigations, the seminars. We both write employee handbooks. And the focus here is to keep employers out of litigation and at the same time solve whatever employee problem they have. That's what the business is doing.
Good. Yeah, and I know you were saying, we were talking earlier, you have a keen interest in the law, and you're studying law, may or may not ever become an actual attorney, but this must be a really fascinating piece of the picture for you.
Thank you, and yes, it is.
Yeah.
I like studying it, and frankly, I'm intrigued by the various laws that are abound, which are focused on keeping all of us on the straight and narrow and penalize those who hurt one another.
So we know each other on a couple of different levels. You're involved in the Chamber of Commerce, and we're both members of the Chamber of Commerce. I know you're much more active in the Chamber than I am, but my office is right in the Chamber of Commerce building, so I'm right next door to it, so I kind of am tuned into that, and then our mutual involvement in Rotary. But you have gone on to this thing that we're calling it's called Squires. But before we get to that, let's see. You were previous to your previous employment, you were a policeman. And how long were you a policeman? What kind of?
For about 2 years.
And then you were a probation officer. And then,
Worked in juvenile hall in San Francisco. Transferred to Marin County, where I was fortunate enough to become a full-time deputy probation officer in the adult division. I worked out of the Civic Center in Santa Fe.
Ah, okay. So that, I guess, stimulated your interest in what you're doing now as a pretty involved avocation in terms of what we call Squires. Mm-hmm. And what does Squires stand for?
This is a program that was developed in 1964, where the pioneer was a man on death row at San Quentin. And he had the unfortunate experience of watching his son be admitted to San Quentin, went to talk to the warden and said, "My life is over. But isn't there something we can do to address the problems of our children so they don't end up here with me?" And that was the inception of the Squires program, which stands for San Quentin Utilization of Inmate Resources, Education, and Services. It is completely run by the inmates with some administrative and management by two wonderful women who work through the warden's office, and they oversee the direction and management of this entire program.
So tell me a little bit about how you got involved in it. You were volunteering at Marin Oaks at the school, and you had this wild idea that maybe you should, what gave you the idea that you ought to introduce the kids to the inmates?
Marin Oaks is an alternative high school in Nevada where they deal with and teach kids who are at risk, kids who are in trouble, who are getting into making contacts with the police department. Through Rotary, we provided speakers for 1 hour every Tuesday morning that would teach these kids the basics about how to get a job, and by extension, how to make a success out of life. Now, based on my background, I began to think about the idea of taking some of these male adolescent boys to San Quentin with the thought in mind of allowing them to be taught by these inmates about things they can do to avoid this path that was going to lead to their incarceration. I did that. I ran into a couple of correctional officers at my health club, and they said, "Larry, we already have a program at San Quentin. It's called the Squires. Why don't you take advantage of that?" And I did. That was in 2002, and I've been involved in this program for the better part of...
So this was something that you dreamed up yourself, and then you found out somebody had that dream way ahead of that. Were you? I'm just interested. Did you start on your own with that, or did you just come in right away into the Squires program?
I went in at the invitation
of the Squires
of the correctional officers and the two women that ran the program, and I became a volunteer.
I see. Yeah.
And got what they call a brown card, which allows me to escort people throughout the institution.
So you started off taking, how old are the kids that you took in?
Ages 10 through 17.
So you take them into the prison, and I'm imagining that your first thought is, what can the kids learn from the inmates? And then how about just go the other way around? Do the inmates learn anything from the kids?
Yeah, kinda.
Yeah.
But the thinking here is that I would meet with the kids and their families, find out what was going on at home, and encourage them to accompany me into this program that meets on the second and third Saturday of every month from 8 o'clock in the morning till 3 o'clock in the afternoon. As a result, I involved other people in Rotary in this program, and then made some overtures toward the Nevada Police Department and said, listen, when your officers run into situations where they're dealing with at-risk kids, please consider this as an alternative where we can intervene and hopefully stop this heinous process where they're going to end up in real trouble. And it's working. That's the good, wonderful news is it works.
Do you have a particular success story that you're most proud of? Or you must have too many of them to even think of one.
Yeah. I'll tell you one story.
I'm watching your face, and you're lighting up, so you're thinking of something.
There was a young man by the name of Michael. And Michael came into the Squires program with his mother, his grandmother, and his aunt. And Michael was told by his father at a very formative age, by the father, that he was never wanted and he was a total, complete failure. This is a young man who was just devastated. He was seeing a psychiatrist for medication. He was seeing a psychologist in counseling. But all I can tell you is that the one thing that would engage Michael is when we started getting to know him, and he would come in twice a month, every month, month after month after month. This went on for about 4 or 5 years. And we could tell the feedback from the mother was, we can tell when Michael needs to come to San Quentin, because he'd start getting very agitated and angry and upset. We'd bring him to San Quentin. I could tell by just looking at this kid that he was depressed. And I'd go over to him and say, Michael, I need your help today. I've got a couple of kids I'm really worried about, and I need your help. His whole face brightened. He said, Larry, tell me what I need to do.
So what does he do? What did you tell him? What did he
To encourage these other kids that there's help available. There's hope available.
And what I'm just trying to, what is the format of that? Do he and the other kids go out to the prison and that's how they connect, or do you meet off-site? How does he connect with the other kids?
Let me tell you about the format of the program.
Yeah.
It's a combination of a tour of the institution and group work. The group work is run and facilitated by the inmates who have been through all of this 2-3 decades before. And they're as committed to helping kids as much as we are. And Michael would go into, what we would do is run groups in the classrooms in the education building.
Okay. So that's off-site. That's not in the prison. So
No, it's inside the prison.
Oh, it's in the prison.
Inside
okay,
the prison.
that's where the group sessions are conducted in the, wow.
That's correct, at the education building. And I would just put Michael into one of the classrooms where we had some really troubled kids. And Michael intuitively knew what to do.
Wow.
He got out of his own stuff
Yeah.
and started focusing on helping this other young man. And it went on year after year after year. We had basically adopted this young man. When we would have periodically, over the holidays, we would have holiday parties for the inmates and volunteers like me. We made sure that Michael and his parents came. Not his parents, but his mother
Yeah.
and his aunt. And Michael just...
And you were involved as
flourished.
well. So you.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you're sort of a surrogate father to him. You
I
feel
did
that
the
way?
best I could with him
Yeah.
because I really enjoyed this kid.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want to mistake something here. Michael had some profound, serious psychiatric and psychological problems. I'm not a licensed psychologist here,
Right.
but I can tell you that when we would work with Michael and bring him out and have him address issues of other kids, he just flourished. And I could tell him. I could tell when he would sit out on the bench outside waiting to come into the prison. I'd say, Michael, I need your help today. And he'd just turn it on.
That's great.
Yeah, whole attitude
Yeah.
change.
Wonderful.
Yeah, it really worked.
That must have a huge impact on you. And,
Oh, it was
Yeah.
wonderful.
yeah.
He and his family ended up going away, and I can appreciate why, because this is pretty intense stuff. This is twice a month, every month. Michael was an icon, and the inmates just gloated over him.
So, so this program is a huge success in terms of your involvement in it, and there's a whole lot of other people that are involved in it. You were saying that there are people that go in who are yoga instructors, and what else were you saying?
Every
Yeah. So
loads of volunteers come into San Quentin because it's the only state prison that's housed in a community. The other state prisons are out in the middle of a desert.
So there are local people that
There are
are
local
they're easy
people
to
that
get
come
to
in.
it. Yeah. So each person comes with their own talent and their own abilities.
That's
and
correct.
They teach the inmates, get them involved, and this is a wonderful thing for the inmates in terms of, some of them are going to get out one day, and they're going to have at least some knowledge of what's out there. That's a big help for them.
This is a very unique program where the Squire members evaluate, train, and groom other inmates to come in and work the program.
And I understand that, do attorneys get involved in the Squire? I know that my understanding is something like new attorneys like to go out and represent the inmates, and do they come in as part of the Squires program, or you don't see that? Or
Don't get involved in it at all.
Yeah.
But I will tell you one thing. Since the program's inception in 1964, not a single Squire member has reoffended. Not a one since 1964.
That says a lot. Yeah.
That says a great deal.
Yeah.
And these are gifted, intelligent, sensitive men who are trying to turn around their past by helping young kids today.
Yeah. So you got involved in this program. Wonderful experience for you, and then you brought that to your Rotary Club. So you belong to the Rotary Club of Novato, and I go to that club now and then. I belong to the Rotary Club of Novato Sunrise, which is a smaller club, but we go to each other's clubs. And we came to our club meeting last week. So you brought this back to your club, and then your club, and I understand the district, adopted this program as a Rotary project.
That's correct.
Yeah.
By the way, it's the Rotary Club of Ignacio.
That exact. Okay. Yeah.
But I would go out of my way because I got so excited about this program. I began to talk to the upper echelons of Rotary, namely the district governors, and I got 2 of them involved in the program, and they got excited. We had 4, if not 5, separate Rotary clubs send representatives to come and work, oversee, and participate in this program over the last 15 years.
And what is there a range of involvement that people? I mean, I can imagine. In fact, you've invited me to several times. You've invited me to come out with you to San Quentin, and I've always kind of, it's not really something I really wanted to do. But after talking to you for a little while this afternoon, you've extended an invitation. I'll go out with you. So we'll go out. Hopefully this next Saturday. What's the range of experience that people have? Some people just gravitate to it, love it. Some people are repulsed. They want to leave. How does that turn out?
It's a very interesting phenomenon. We're talking about a very unique, intense, and can be a very dangerous environment. There were people who wanted to come out, and after one Saturday out there, I would get one of 2 reactions. Some people said, I appreciate the work you're doing out here, Larry, but this is not for me. I'll do everything I can to support you, but I'm not coming back here. There are a separate group of people who came to me after spending one Saturday out there that said, I don't care what it takes, Larry. I want to work here with you. There's something here that has touched me very deeply and profoundly. And I'll give up, I would gladly give up a couple of Saturdays a month to come out here and participate in this program because I see the overwhelming value this has, not only for the kids, but for the men who work with the kids. Because a lot of these men that I work with out there that are inmates entered the state prison system when they were teenagers.
Yeah.
And you can imagine what offense they committed that resulted in that. They were certified as adults and they were sent directly to state prison. And I've gotten to know a lot of these men very closely, and I can tell you they are incredibly, it's a pleasure to get to know these men. They're just as bright, just as gifted, just as articulate as any professional anywhere else. Yes, they have their issues, and this is one of their ways of reconciling the fact that they may have taken a life 3 decades ago. This is part of their reconciliation.
You were talking about this word penitentiary, penance.
That's right. They are literally seeking penance.
Yeah. I had never thought about that word prison, which is a derivation of penitentiary, and that's a derivation of penance. I don't think we often think about prison as a place for penance. Of course, it sure ought to be, I guess. Is this punishment or rehabilitation? That's the age-old question. And punishment as a deterrent, that's great. But boy, if they're going to be ultimately let out, it sure be great if they were rehabilitated in some way. And you're going a long way in that direction.
I agree.
Yeah.
You're going to see.
And you've talked about this as your calling. So tell me about that. Why do you consider this a calling?
All I can tell you is my allegiance, my commitment, my loyalty, my devotion has grown since the first day I walked in there. I look forward to going. I am now also working in a different part of the prison, on top of working with the Squires, where I teach short-term inmates who are going to be released within anywhere from 3 to 9 months, teach them how to get a job. And beginning talking to employers to see if they'd be open to hiring parolees from San Quentin. And surprisingly enough, there's a lot of them that are willing to give parolees a chance.
Why
Part of this is the economy.
Oh. It's hard to find. It's hard to find good help, and one thing I just imagine that at the very least it's a known quantity. You know what they've been through, whereas if you hire someone off the street, you don't maybe know what they haven't been accused of doing or what they've done. So it's kind of a perverse way of looking at it, I suppose. But it's great that there are people out there that are willing to give these guys a chance. That are they've earned the chance.
Thank you. The fact of the matter is there are more openings than there are applicants in this country. We've never been in this shape in a very long time. There are frankly more jobs than there are people interested in getting the jobs. So every employer is looking to add to their staffing and having a real difficult time finding applicants. So yes, today, more so than any other time, I'm seeing, from a professional point of view, a willingness to take a gamble and take a risk and hire one of these men.
And the state is putting a lot of pressure on releasing
That's correct.
Prisoners. And how did that come about? Maybe you don't want to get into that.
Brown was told for many years, we want by the courts that to reduce the overpopulation in the prison system, you will, meaning the courts to the governor, you will start releasing nonviolent offenders. And frankly, as I recall the history behind this, Brown dragged his feet. And then, as you know, you don't ignore a Superior Court judge. And he said, if you continue to fight us on this, you're not going to like the consequences. And he finally got the word, And I can tell you for the last 5, 7, 8 years, there's been a real effort to get people out of prison, parole them early.
And these are all nonviolent.
That's correct.
Yeah, yeah. So there's got to be some discretion there, and hopefully it's being used properly. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So how many inmates are involved in this program? Well, how many inmates? You were telling me an astounding number of inmates are actually in San Quentin. How many?
4,000 inmates, including those on death row.
Wow. And how many are involved in the Squires program?
About 25 to 30.
Ah, not very many. And so I understand the inmates actually run that program. They decide who gets in, who gets out, who must go, who gets washed out. What are the requirements?
I would think, because I don't know, maturity, commitment to learning, a willingness and a love to work with young men, doing what you need to do to take a look at your own personal problems, because there are all sorts of self-help groups out there, loads of them.
Right.
And not everybody makes it. Some of them wash out.
How many volunteers are there in the Squires program?
People like me, I would think about 12 to 15. We have
Are there is people like you, other people who are unlike you in the Squires program?
who are volunteers,
Yeah.
all different backgrounds.
Yeah, yeah. And that's what you mean by people like you, of different backgrounds. that
Different
that volunteers
backgrounds.
come out. And are there particular requirements for that?
A selflessness, if you will.
Is there a vetting process?
Yeah, I think there is. But ultimately, I report to 2 women who oversee this program, and they're my bosses. And they have every right to tell me what to do and what not to do.
Okay. Well, evidently you've been doing it the right way, because you've been at it for how long now?
Pretty close to 17 years.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you've been doing well, and I've been hearing about this from you for many years. And like I said, you have. I'll just tell you, Larry has invited me out there a few times, and I've always sort of demurred on that. But but now you got me, Larry. So, I'll be out there. I'll be out there with you Saturday if we're good for that, and I'll get a lot more information about it. Really appreciate the invitation.
When you're out there and you witness the interaction between these kids and these very gifted men, the interaction between these men and the parents, an openness on the part of the kids, because a lot of them open up. You will see a tremendous amount of support and, frankly, love.
This is great. Larry, thank you so much for
You're quite welcome.
coming on the show today. This was a wonderful conversation. I can see the passion, understand why you consider this a calling, and you're doing such wonderful things for the community.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
It is my privilege to be here.
Okay, well, and thank you for joining us today. We'll have more. Stay tuned. Stay safe. See you next time.